aspect of a national e-learning solution, which perhaps using the term solution is inappropriate, because as David Cousins would point out, this is multifactorial, and it isn't the solution to all problems, but it hopefully will provide a help with learning. So I'm going to talk about what has become to be known as the Prescribe project, what it is, how it's being developed, its implementation, and then maybe ask some important questions. I've used this slide on many occasions, and really I shouldn't use the term emerging. They're well and truly emerged. Problems with errors, adverse reactions, and other problems with prescribing that we've heard about. And this slide from the study done in 2002, I think indicates immediately it's multifactorial, and I think everybody acknowledges that. It's not just about education, but I think education was identified as an important factor in that study, and I think several other studies, notably over the last year, independent studies, have done the same thing. I guess one of the contributions that our group made to this was this online poll of medical student opinion, which of course is flawed in many ways, selective reporting, etc. But what was clear from 2,500 responses from medical students around the UK was that when they were asked whether they felt they had enough teaching in this area in their course, you can see that in fact 4/5 effectively said no, they didn't, and I think those are the kind of views which also came out in other studies more recently. Now, a lot of the real change which has happened, I think, can be traced back to a press briefing given by Jeff and others from the BPS, and here he is quoted on the BBC website, and I don't know whether it was just his name appearing on the BBC website, but everything seemed to change from that point. After a bit of a Barney and a few nasty letters that some of us got from the General Medical Council, I think Peter Rubin called everybody in, not just the BPS but other stakeholders in prescribing, to almost a showdown meeting, it seemed at the time, in January 2007. And critically, there were representatives not just from the BPS who'd been seen as banging on about clinical pharmacology in medical schools, etc., but many of the other important stakeholders in relation to the prescribing process were represented. And that group did, over several meetings, some, though I say it myself, some excellent work. I think the first important step forward in relation to what Sarah said earlier on was that all of those groups agreed on the outcomes of undergraduate education. First time that I'm aware of that there was a consensus view on that, and you can go to the website and find the more detailed report. If we don't know where we're heading, there are going to be constant arguments for long into the future about what we should be doing about it and whether we're in fact doing it. And of course those outcomes from that discussion fed almost lock, stock and barrel into the new issue of Tomorrow's Doctors, which the foreword points out quite rightly is going to be a very difficult ask for all medical schools. I think anticipating that, the Medical Schools Council, as a result of that meeting in 2007, suggested that the British Pharmacological Society and themselves made a bid to E-Learning for Health, which is a subsidiary of the Department of Health, who develop e-learning programs mostly for postgraduate education. We made a bid to have the first undergraduate program developed, clearly to deal with the whole area of clinical pharmacology and prescribing education. And after a little bit of work with the graphics and comms people, we came up with the tablet logo and the term prescribe. But very importantly, I think for members of the British Pharmacological Society in the room, it's e-learning for clinical pharmacology and prescribing. And it's very much a collaborative effort, as I'll say later, between those groups. So the vision here is to produce a national e-learning portal, really, to support prescribers in training. Clearly it's focused largely at medical students, but there will be others who will have interest. We want to enhance educational opportunities, support medical schools in what is going to be a very tough ask for them to fulfill tomorrow's doctors. And I would remind you once again, the medical schools asked for this. This is not a process that we're trying to foister onto them. We hope it's going to provide focused learning, online skills practice as far as that's possible, and some work on clinical problem-solving skills. Clearly the target here is the 36,000 undergraduate medical students in the UK, but it doesn't take too much imagination to see that there are a whole host of other groups who, if something successful is produced, will also have an interest, I'm sure, in what we're doing, and indeed we've already been contacted by many of these other groups. And the model that eLearning for Health work with is that it's provided absolutely free. Their products are absolutely free to public service institutions here in the UK, so that would be universities and the NHS, but the income stream to keep the thing alive into the future, and that of course is absolutely vital with any big development and e-learning project, that it has longevity. The funding stream comes from selling the system overseas. I'm not going to sort of bore you with a mantra on e-learning, but clearly it has some advantages, but it also has advantages. Cost effectiveness, bringing people together, particularly if you do it on a national basis, convenience of access, driven by learners themselves, and potentially interactive, which of course other aspects of education are interactive, but more interactive hopefully than a lot of lecture-based courses are. This is collaborative. eLearning for Health are providing the resource. The British Pharmacological Society plus others, and we're inviting collaboration with others, will provide the academic input to develop the learning sessions, and the Medical Schools Council will provide some of the academic input, but clearly are going to be involved in implementing this in medical schools. But just to finish on the previous slide, we are looking for interest from other groups who would like to join in and actually use what I hope will be a hugely influential resource in the future. How are we being guided as to what to provide? Well, clearly it has to focus on tomorrow's doctors. That's what medical schools are being asked to respond to, but that itself will be informed by many other curricula which we're hoping to draw on in deciding where we're going. In a nutshell, we've divided the learning sessions up into 5 sections. There will be learning sessions on the principles of clinical pharmacology, some focused around specific drugs, learning sessions around particular therapeutic scenarios. We've got an area related to prescribing skills, some of which have been mentioned several times already this morning, and there's also a small part of it will be, if you like, an additional extra bit that hopefully will refresh matters for foundation doctors when they get there. So although we expect medical schools will dip into this in different ways, we're really focusing sections 1 and 2 on more junior students, whereas sections 3 and 4 will be focused on those who are a bit more senior. Alongside this, we're developing a number of other things which I'd like to I will come on and tell you what those other things are, but what are these knowledge sessions? Well, they're meant to be learning duration of about 20 to 30 minutes. They contain about 20 online content pages, and they're also interactive, and they have to be interactive because through experience, if you develop e-learning, which is just an online list of pages as in a textbook, then you're not going to take your learners with us. So it's very important that this indeed is interactive. This is just a sort of rough outline of what one session looks like when you open it up. You see very clearly the learning objectives set out, the prerequisites for learning, links to other resources which might be relevant, and then navigation down the left-hand side of the page. And then there are a series of learning pages bit like this one's sort of animated, and you can do all sorts of interesting things with computers these days to actually try and bring what might seem a sort of difficult science alive. And in fact, we've got a great science to be talking about. It's an interesting one, and as previous speakers have indicated, highly relevant. We're going to develop an assessment area. There will be an online library, a glossary, links, and indeed anybody here who's got some bright ideas of what else we might provide, I'd be delighted to hear. Assessment is clearly very important. It's important for the medical schools, not least because tomorrow's doctors ask each individual outcome to be assessed very clearly. And there will be assessment certainly within sessions. They're peppered with these sorts of drag and drop exercises which students have to do, multiple choices and other kinds of assessment which I've not got time to show you. But we're also making sure that they have access to these practical skills assessments, and we're going to build up, we hope, some MCQs and EMQs. And I think it's important that with this being e-learning, you can actually capture the data as people actually do these exercises and just get an opportunity to see exactly what kind of responses are coming through. So really, what's the progress? Well, there is a website, but it's just a front end at the moment. But for those who are interested, you can go and register your interest on that website, and you'll be kept up to date. We have an editorial board at the moment. There are 6 of us who are working as editors on the project, but we're very interested in others who want to join us to try and make sure that the material that goes into this program is of the highest quality. As a project executive, I've already suggested that we've largely thrashed out the curriculum to be delivered. All the templates for writing sessions are there, and we've already got the bespoke building of these simulators underway. What is the project timeline? Well, we're expecting and hoping that at some stage in 2012 we will have rolled out a large proportion of the 300 learning sessions, but medical students will hopefully be able to register for this system. We're already talking to the medical schools. We'll hopefully be able to register for this with this system from the middle of 2010 and have access to what is available then, and of course further learning materials will be drip fed onto the system from that point onwards. As I've said, the medical schools are already in the process of discussing with e-learning for health, getting medical students access to the e-learning for health a portal, so that is a very important part of the process. How is this going to work with your medical schools? Well, it's entirely voluntary. Nobody's going to ram this into the living room or bedrooms of any medical students or indeed departments of clinical pharmacology. But it is there for those who wish to use it. Certainly in Edinburgh, I would hope what we will do is set some of these as exercises from time to time and use the time, which isn't as much as we'd like to have, in front of the students to debrief around those, and we'll certainly be pointing our medical students to some of the skills areas. But we hope that it will be used. We believe it will be used, and I think there's experience from others who have done this in Australia and the Netherlands that when you give students something that they know is important and is of reasonable quality, they will go and visit it. So I think this is going to offer a national e-learning solution, but I think the most important point here for the British Pharmacological Society is that clinical pharmacology will be very much back in all medical schools, at least recognised by the medical students, if indeed the departments to support it haven't been redeveloped. So some important questions. Quite the converse, will this kill off clinical pharmacology? I think experience from elsewhere suggests that is not the case. I think it's much more likely that, as one of the earlier speakers said, when people discover that there's something there which they're not quite so sure about, the students will then be asking, where are the clinical pharmacologists who are actually going to deliver this. I think it's also important to say this isn't a total solution anyway, and I don't think we're about providing a virtual online medical school. We're about providing something which is going to be supportive to those who are delivering what's the most important part of the curriculum. Will it improve NHS prescribing? Again, very difficult question to get an answer to, but I think most of us would accept that there is a need for more education. You certainly can't prescribe without any education, and I think this is certainly going to be a step in the direction of providing and highlighting the need for more education. So will there be measures of success? Well, obviously usage will be a measure of success. Ultimately, it will be down to whether the quality of prescribing and use of medicines improves, and as I've already indicated, that's a really tough question to answer, but if anybody's got some ideas, I'd like to hear from you. But it's worth noting that all students will be registered because there are so many now postgraduate e-learning initiatives being developed by eLearning for Health, including Foundation. It will be possible to follow individuals through from their training experience to what they're doing on the wards. Frightening though that might seem to some of those individuals, but that is definitely a future which may well be coming. So ladies and gentlemen, in summary, I'd just like to say that I hope that this will be a major educational resource for medical students and others. It's a collaborative exercise with the Medical Schools Council and the Department of Health, which I think gives it great strength. But very importantly, although we're still very much on the launch pad or just slightly taken off from the launch pad, we need the help of many others to come and join us both as authors and editors. So if any of you are interested, do please contact me later. Thanks.